This video was scripted and recorded before October 2024. In that time, there has been news about the series, making some of the statements in the script wrong. These have been edited to correctly reflect what we know about the series now. When I look back at my childhood, there is one video game series that sticks out like no other. A game that inspired me, forged friendships, and has only positive memories attached. A series I sunk thousands of hours into and continue to play today. A series that defined an entire console. This series is, of course, LittleBigPlanet. The sheer mention of the series is sure to bring a flood of memories to anyone who played any of the games. It is one of my favourite video game series in history, and for so many reasons. The fantastic levels, the crafted art style, the dedicated community. I could list every aspect of the franchise and still find more to love. With so many platformers releasing recently, and Sony also publishing Astrobot, I want to take the opportunity to talk about one of their best platforming series that made its start during the 7th console generation. Its highs, its lows, and where to take the series from here. LittleBigPlanet is a 2D platformer developed by British team Medium Molecule, and it released in October 2008. The levels consist of your traditional platforming challenges, jumps, enemies, bosses, but what set its gameplay apart were the layers, allowing forward and backward movement in the levels. It added a great sense of depth to 2D platforming that felt unique and still feels unique today. You could grab spongy material and use it as platforms or a rope to swing from. It was an instant hit for its great gameplay, charming visuals, and soundtrack. One of the game's composers is Daniel Pemberton, who then went on to make the Spider-Verse soundtracks many years later. And I would do a side-by-side comparison showing the difference between LittleBigPlanet's soundtrack to the Prowler's theme from Into the Spider-Verse, but I'll get copyrighted. The story wasn't much to brag about, it was just an easy way to explain where you're going next, but those levels had variety in the challenges they presented, as well as their aesthetic. You go from historical England to the American subways to a tundra in the North Pole. No two worlds feel the same. Throughout the levels, you could collect score bubbles, adding a competitive edge whether you're playing co-op with friends, locally or online. Every level includes prize bubbles, and these would grant you all kinds of rewards. Stickers, decorations, materials, costumes, there is plenty to unlock in LittleBigPlanet. The stickers can also be used on a sticker trigger, where placing down the specified sticker grants you more prizes. It's really cool being able to use the stickers to add decoration to the level, whilst also being rewarded for doing so, and it gives another reason to try and collect all the prizes you see along the way. There's a great feedback loop of collecting prizes, to use them, to get more prizes, to use them, to get more prizes. Acing a level was achieved by completing it without dying, and this gives you even more prizes. Collecting all the prizes in a level would grant you more prizes. There are so many different ways to unlock things in the game, and it is always satisfying. Acing levels added an incentive to perfect each stage, and allow yourself to get better at the game as you become more familiar with all of its mechanics. There is no greater measure of how far your skills have progressed than your first playthrough of the bunker compared to when you successfully ace it. This level separates the strong from the weak. My personal favourite world is the islands. You go from ninja training in the first level, then a huge tower you need to climb with spinning platforms, using their momentum to get to the next wheel, some being grabbable for safety, and some being entirely wooden, posing the utterly defeating threat of falling back to the beginning, all before ending with a fight against the terrible Oni, beaten by slowly inching a cat closer towards the demon, and finishing it off by firing bombs when it gets close enough. They say variety is the spice of life, and LittleBigPlanet understands that through to the core. What other game with a Peggy 7 rating has a meerkat strip club? None. But the best part about this game is not the fantastic levels, the dynamic soundtrack, or the plethora of goodies to unlock. It's not even Stephen Fry's iconic narration.
Almost every dog I know has a brain. apart from next door's dog, Niblet, who spent the afternoon chewing a bone, then realised he only had 3 legs left.
The best parts about LittleBigPlanet are the create and publish features. Every player had their own moon, letting them create their own levels and upload them for others to enjoy. The levels in the main story modes of all the LittleBigPlanet games were all made within the game's create mode. Anybody could recreate those levels with the very same tools you unlock throughout the story. I've always found that really fascinating, that you're buying a fantastic 2D platformer with an entire game engine, the very same one the developers used in making the levels you play. And whilst there were some fantastic levels in the community, there was also the infinite plague of regurgitated copy and pasted uploads, most notably the infamous survival genre. These could be bomb survivals, having to survive the endlessly falling bombs until you get to the end, or the shark survivals, trying to jump platform to platform underwater whilst sharks target the player and try to kill you. For any LBP fan, especially those who experienced the games at their peak, these levels are sure to be a treasure trove of memories with siblings and friends, myself included. But beyond the simpler, dumb, arcadey levels, there were creations that excelled in everything the game had to offer. Little Dead Space is an immediate standout to me. You played as Isaac, and it took the dark, unnerving atmosphere of Dead Space and translated it so flawlessly into a tense side-scroller. LittleBigPlanet also had a wealth of DLC, with tons of licensed costume packs letting you play as many characters within pop culture. Sonic, Marvel, Pirates of the Caribbean, as well as free costumes for certain holidays and occasions. But the other type of DLC is the showstopper, the level packs. They were varying in quality from amazing to... These DLC level packs were usually around 5 levels long, with a boss fight at the end. For around $5.99, you would get a campaign to play with tons of stickers, decorations, costumes, materials and tools to unlock and use in your own levels. The Metal Gear Solid pack had a paintball weapon called the Paintinator, and could be fired at enemies or targets with a health meter. And the coolest level pack was the Pirates of the Caribbean pack, now with real water. A whole gameplay style was added with swimming, and the kit also included the scuba gear power-up. Without it, you wouldn't be able to breathe for long underwater, and this led to some tense moments, making the water feel dangerous. But with the scuba gear, you could breathe forever, and it changed the water from a fear to something far more relaxing and tranquil. These DLC level packs gave birth to more gameplay types with each new tool added, and if you didn't own the DLC, you could still play user-published levels with those tools on the community, allowing you to still enjoy the content they had to offer. One of the most favoured LittleBigPlanet 1 community levels was Bora Bora Island Water Sports, and it highlighted just how serene a level could feel with the water, making it feel so much more inviting without even requiring you to go into the water, just having it there in the level. LittleBigPlanet also had a PSP version released in November 2009, developed by Guerrilla Cambridge in collaboration with Media Molecule. This version of the game had 2 layers instead of 3 like its PS3 counterpart, yet it never really felt like it was missing anything with how well it worked around its limitations. Surprisingly, the game still featured the create and publish functions, and it still blows me away that they got a level creator on the PSP. Of course it isn't as in-depth as the PS3 version, however it is still remarkably impressive. And much like its console counterpart, LittleBigPlanet PSP had DLC costumes. How could we ever forget Sack Nana? I don't have much to say about this game since it's been about a decade since I played it. Despite being on considerably weaker hardware, it still felt like LittleBigPlanet. Sadly, on July 30th, 2016, the service for LittleBigPlanet PSP closed down. The mere fact that you could upload custom levels on a PSP was amazing, and I think it should be remembered because of that impressive technological achievement. Both games were highly praised from critics, and LittleBigPlanet PS3 sold 3 million copies in its lifetime, placing it as the 19th best-selling game on the system, and it was nominated for 55 awards, winning 30 of them. These awards included the 2009 Golden Joystick, the 2009 British Academy Children's Awards, in various categories in the 10th Annual Game Developers' Choice, 12th Annual Interactive Achievements, and 2009 Industry Excellence, and many more that I can't be bothered to list. Although no solid sales number for the PSP version was released, VG Charts estimates it to be 2.61 million. Putting it as the PSP's 9th best-selling game. It was also in the running for awards too, far less than the PS3 version, however it was nominated for Portable Game of the Year, an outstanding achievement in portable game design at the 13th Annual Interactive Achievements. Both versions of LittleBigPlanet were a critical and financial success. The stage was set for PlayStation's brand new IP, but where would the series go from here? LittleBigPlanet 2 completely reinvented what was capable and makes the first game feel like a test demo. Do you want to make music? Do it! Do you want to make movies? Go ahead! LittleBigPlanet 2 wasn't just a game, it was a creative platform. Whatever form you wanted to express yourself or dip your toes in, you could do it. The platforming as well was far more expressive, with the new power-ups all having their different uses. The grapple hook was always a favourite of mine with how it seems simple enough to use, but the sense of flow in using it could be hard to maintain. Clever use and mastery of its physics could net you higher speeds and new pathways with prize bubbles, and it added verticality to the levels in a new engaging way. Speaking of verticality, the bounce pads! Yeah, I like them. The Creatinator was pretty much the newer and better version of the Metal Gear Solid's Paintinator, except you weren't limited to paintballs, you could fire whatever you wanted. Rockets, water, hamsters, the possibilities were endless. Pick your object, set the speed, and fire. The story mode has a really good variation in how it demonstrates the Creatinator's power. One level lets you fire platforms to create new paths. One lets you fire water to grow plants, and another lets you fire explosives to defeat enemies. It didn't have just one function. You could create, change and destroy, all with a single power-up, and it will forever be one of the best thanks to its versatility. The Grabinators were far less exciting than the others though. You could pick things up and throw them. It made for some cool levels where you could throw bombs or throw blocks to make platform, but this one just never stuck out to me. But the magnum opus of LittleBigPlanet 2 is something else entirely. It's not even one feature. The masterpieces that defined the entire game's identity, of course, are none other than the Controlinator and the Sackbots. With the Controlinator, you could take control of whatever you want. A rabbit, a cardboard box, the hamsters we fired out of the Creatinator earlier. The Controlinator was the defining power-up of LittleBigPlanet 2, and both Media Molecule and the community knew that. The Sackbots were little creatures you could spawn to mimic a sack person, and it made Craftworld feel so much more alive. You now had proper characters in the story mode with full voice acting. You had enemies to defeat that weren't just cardboard cutouts with a weak point. You could command them to do whatever you wanted, which was an essential tool in the filmmaking aspect. But when you combine the two, put a Controlinator on a Sackbot, a realm of possibility opens. A player could set a costume to the Sackbot, throw on a Controlinator, and now you play as that character. Add in other various different game logic, and you can truly be sucked into a level. These were truly awesome to play, and immersed you on a whole different level that wouldn't have been possible without the new game logic introduced. I've wrote an entire page just on the power-ups, so let's get into the story mode. And my god, is it an upgrade in every way. Remember how I said you can make your own movies with the new filmmaking tools? Media Molecule added in cutscenes with this game, and it displayed in full confidence how users could create a thrilling story. I'm not gonna pretend it's the most gripping or deep with complex themes, because it's not. It's a fairly simple plot, following a band of misfits forming the Alliance to take down the evil Negativatron. It sounds dumb when I put it that way, But it's leagues better than LittleBigPlanet 1's story, and ties into the series' theme of creativity very well. Something I feel all the games do tremendously, actually, where all the villains are trying to harm the idea of self-expression in one way or another. And again, it's not a masterpiece of a script or anything like that, but I always found the Negativitron to be a fun, compelling villain. The cutscenes allow the plot to have a natural flow and have an actual presence now, and it's something I always look forward to when replaying the game. In contrast, LittleBigPlanet 1's story feels like an afterthought, just going from place to place without much of a reason, having to stop still in the level to read text bubbles from each world's curator. But what about the story levels that tie the plot together?
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
The new power-ups are introduced often enough to keep every level feeling fresh, and in the levels they return, they're done in a new way. I previously spoke about the Creatornator showing 3 unique functions it can serve: create, change, and destroy. But let's take a look at the grapple hook. What more could be done with just swinging over a big gap? Well, it starts off with exactly that, crossing big gaps. Then you get to the side level, Tower of Whoop, where it's more about maintaining your speed to finish the race as fast as possible to get the highest score. Then you get to Da Vinci's boss fight, and now they're used to reach the switches needed to disable the robot. Using the added height wisely can help you avoid the attacks and get to the opposite switch easier. In the final world, you have to latch onto the bottom of a platform and bounce on enemies until they're all defeated, all whilst using the swinging mechanics to dodge and weave through the enemy projectiles and laser beams, all whilst trying not to fall. They all use the core concept of swinging, but they all have a different function in them that makes each appearance slightly different than the last. And again, the Controlinator. The level Avalon's Advanced Armaments Academy is entirely dedicated to 3 completely different animal robots. A rabbit with a jump and slam attack, a dog with a strong bark capable of moving obstacles, and the aforementioned hamster which just goes fast and that's all that it does, but it is ridiculously fun to spam R1 and keep your speed. In one level we have 3 different machines that use the Controlinator in different ways. But there's more throughout the entire game. In Flight of the Bumblebees, you ride, you guessed it, massive bees, in an on-rails shooter before approaching a mini-boss to take out. In another level you control a caterpillar climbing up the tree, weaving through all the traps and enemies, and there's a boss fight where you shoot white blood cells to take down an illness residing within one of the story characters. Everything in this game is just constantly expanding and showing how many different things you can do with one tool at your disposal. It is a thrill ride to play because this game is constantly evolving what is seemingly a simple mechanic. LittleBigPlanet 2 is without a doubt one of the most pure, creative games I've had the luxury to play, and I feel so lucky to have experienced it during its heyday. The online was even better with this game too, thanks to all the tools available in the game. LittleBigPlanet 2's online is a memory I will never forget, with friendships made lasting to this day, over a decade later. I distinctively remember the ransack levels, a Mario Party minigame marathon kind of deal. Me and my sisters played the game of life all the time, a true accurate rendition of the classic board game. There was a museum heist level that I adored. You could only get caught 3 times before you had to bail with whatever you had looted, and I tried endlessly to complete every heist in every room, but I could just never manage to complete it. I can't list every level I loved, I'll be here all day, but I think those 3 depict such an array of different games in different styles, which could not have been possible in LittleBigPlanet 1. Media Molecule loved their fanbase, and they showed that to no end, and still do today in Dreams. In LittleBigPlanet, they handed out the elusive prize crown for various reasons, the most common being an MM pick. This was the golden goose for any level creator. If your level was MM picked, it meant the developers of the game had seen your level and thought it was truly something special. It was highlighted on its own separate page showcasing all the MM picked levels. The community got really creative with new mechanics in unconventional ways too, one of the most memorable being the Controlinator as a teleporter. Like, how do you even think of that? and managed to exploit it to make that possible. LittleBigPlanet 2's online used the same servers as the first game, meaning you could still play all the levels published on LittleBigPlanet 1. It was all backwards compatible, and not just the community levels. All the goodies you collected during LittleBigPlanet 1's story and community levels were importable. All the DLC was cross-compatible. Remember the water and scuba gear I mentioned that came with the Pirates of the Caribbean DLC? That's just a feature in the second game now. You don't need the DLC for it anymore. And then we get on to LittleBigPlanet 2 DLC. I can't think of a game with better DLC. There were costume packs seeping out of the walls. Gravity Rush, DC, Uncharted, Assassin's Creed, Final Fantasy, Ratchet, Jack, Sly, The Muppets, Oddworld, Disney Princesses, Toy Story, Journey, Tearaway, and again the return of free seasonal DLC. But the level packs, they were a thing of beauty forged from the gods above. The first one to release was the Toy Story level pack, and it remains an all-time favourite for me. Fun drinking game, take a shot every time I say LittleBigPlanet 2 level pack is one of the series' best. It truly emulates the charm of the Toy Story universe and its characters, going from Andy's room to Zurg's planet, taking down evil Dr. Porkchop, and of course with a bunch of stickers, decorations, music, all that jazz, all being linked to Toy Story. It is a joy from beginning to end, and this was the first level pack we received. The next would be the Move Pack, arguably one of the best level packs in the franchise's history. This DLC made better use of the Move controller than anything else on the PS3, though admittedly the competition wasn't hard to beat, and it added to the world building of the game's story mode. I wasn't entirely sure where to put this, but there was also a downloadable game called Sackboy's Prehistoric Moves. If the name didn't give it away, it utilised the Move controller, and was a short game showing how the device can be used in conjunction with a regular DualShock. But the game never stuck with me for one reason. If you wanted to play it properly, you'd need two people, one player using the controller and another player using the Move controller. It used the technology fine, but it paved the way for the Move pack to be as great as it was. But how could we forget the Muppets pack, taking the pure joy and whimsy of the Toy Story DLC and cranking it up double. The Attracto Gel lets you walk up walls and on ceilings, bringing a whole new way to look at the platforming. And also the Beaker Creatinator fires Beaker clones. That is so dumb and stupid, and I love it. Everything was so endearingly bonkers, and it made for such an entertaining time. The cross-controller DLC let you connect your PS Vita, switching between the two screens and using that format in ways a million times better than the Wii U could ever dream of. Remember how I mentioned the community used the Controllinator to teleport you to places in levels? The cross-controller pack added the wormhole, and it was exactly that, a teleporter. A feature created by the community became a real feature. This is what I mean when I say Media Molecule adored their fans. And here, we get to the defining DLC for LittleBigPlanet 2. This pack gave you a hero cape power-up, letting you glide for as long as you could keep your speed. It had wall jump material allowing for, you guessed it, wall jumps. But the biggest game changer was the Memorizer. This neat little gadget allowed a level to save your progress and created something entirely new, a hub world. In this DLC, you start in the Watchtower, and every level is selectable from here. There are prizes within the small hub world too, and as you beat more levels, more of the Watchtower opens up to you. Every level felt so unique with the cape and wall jumping, and it reigns supreme as the best LittleBigPlanet DLC of all time. LittleBigPlanet 2 was phenomenal, and a defining game of the PlayStation 3. Every inch of this game was oozing with pure unbridled love, and I feel incredibly lucky to have spent so much of my youth within Craft World. Like its predecessor, the game was getting 9s and 10s across the board, and it went on to win 2 BAFTAs for Family and Game Innovation, as well as Family Game of the Year at the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. Like the other games, the exact sales are a bit difficult to find, but VG Charts estimates 3.43 million for the sequel. placing it as the PS3's 15th best-selling game. Everything this game achieved was more than deserved, and it stands as one of the best games in history. So, after a successful first game and a masterpiece sequel, where do you go? No, I'm not rushing into that like Sony did. We can't get too ahead of ourselves now, can we? We need to go back to January 27th, 2011, just 9 days after LittleBigPlanet 2's release. Sony unveiled the next-gen portable, their PSP successor. This is when a new LittleBigPlanet game was revealed, but it wasn't until June 6th, 2011 that the next-gen portable would finally have a full reveal as the PlayStation Vita, along with the announcement of LittleBigPlanet Vita. The game released January 2012, and unlike the other games in the series so far, it wasn't developed at all by Media Molecule. They were busy working on a different game for the Vita, Tearaway. Instead, LittleBigPlanet Vita was developed by Tarsier Studios and Double 11. Tarsier Studios developed much of the DLC for LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2, so they were well acquainted with the series, and responsible for the amazing DLCs they both had to offer. I picked up a Vita Slim in 2020, and honestly, it's one of my favourite handheld systems. When the whole world was in lockdown, I was getting to experience the PlayStation Vita and LittleBigPlanet Vita for the first time, and it was truly something special. You know the gameplay formula by now: 3 layers, a story mode with prizes to collect, user-generated content being the backbone. We're familiar with all of it. But if you thought the series could only go downhill after the outstanding sequel and change in lead development team,
you're dead wrong, man.
To quote LittleBigPlanet's content creator Blazing Victini, this game is portable perfected. It feels built off of LittleBigPlanet 2. Everything feels very similar to that game and how it plays, and everything introduced there is present in Vita. The cutscenes, the bounce pads, the power-ups, they're all here. It's a shame LittleBigPlanet Vita is stuck on that system, because despite how much I gushed about LittleBigPlanet 2, I think Vita has the best single-player content in the series. But a big part of why I prefer LittleBigPlanet 2 is the community. As I said before, I got a Vita during lockdown in 2020, and LBPVita was the first game I played on it. I aced every level, got all the prize bubbles, and was ready to move on to the online. But by this point, it was desolate. It doesn't help that it was stuck on a system that only sold well in Japan, but also none of the community levels from LBP 1 or 2 were compatible. LittleBigPlanet 3 had released 6 years before I finally got the chance to play this game, and the community had moved on, and those that didn't like the third game moved back to LBP 2 instead. With a combination of having a very small active user base, a far smaller selection of community levels, and no co-op play due to the nature of the Vita being a handheld system, there wasn't a lot I could get from the online at this point. I could play the team-picked levels, and all the other popular levels, but levels being uploaded every day was a thing of the past. Finding people to play with was rare, and I had to play on the weekends in the evenings for when there were actually a handful of people playing the game. But one thing about the online made it shine was the ability to download community levels. You couldn't re-upload them yourself, but it just allowed for offline play with the community levels that you downloaded. When lockdown restrictions were being eased, I brought my PS Vita everywhere with me, and being able to play all the stuff I downloaded wherever I was felt euphoric. This feature would prove to be even more useful the following year, but I'm getting ahead of myself there again. I don't mean to downplay the community. Everything I played was fantastic, but I just wish I could have been there when it was active. I mentioned that LittleBigPlanet Vita has my favourite single-player content in the series, but why is that? Well, a huge part of it is the atmosphere. You probably know Tarsier Studios for their later series, Little Nightmares. An eerie, unsettling game that's not exactly horror, but definitely has a creepy factor to it, similar to Coraline or Over the Garden Wall. That same vibe is accounted for in LBP Vita. It starts off quite joyous with the lovable, silly Colonel Flounders introducing you to the new world of Carnavalia, once a happy place but now drab and lonely, thanks to the antagonist, the Puppeteer, and the dolls he created called the Hollow. Their design and general concept are unnerving. They have no life, no soul, and they cause havoc around Carnavalia. By the end of the game, the discomfort of the atmosphere kicks in, and it's here that that same vibe of Little Nightmares comes into effect. The previous game also had a shift in tone towards the end. LittleBigPlanet 2 was a fun adventure meeting different members of the Alliance, and the final world, the Cosmos, was an all-out climax. But in LittleBigPlanet Vita, it changes from the bright, exciting jackpot city to the cold, lonely, spooky mansion. It's unlike anything else in the series, and it makes for a truly memorable finale. The story is a massive step up from LittleBigPlanet 2's, but I don't want to spoil much since I found it to be very emotionally driven towards the end. The levels within the story are all really creative too, and the Vita's hardware is used to its full capabilities. The front and rear touchpads allow you to slide objects, pull down springs that launch you, push objects between layers to create new paths, and tilt the system to move things around. It never feels forced thanks to how natural all the mechanics are, and the touchscreen's functionality remains one of my favourite aspects of the game. Speaking of hardware, can we appreciate how impressive this game looks? It's on a handheld, with the power scoping somewhere between the PS2 and 3, yet it looks on par with the PS3 LittleBigPlanet games. And unlike LittleBigPlanet's PSP, there are no limitations on the Create mode this time. It feels like LittleBigPlanet 2 in your pocket. It is so impressive. Like LittleBigPlanet 2, there's a bunch of score-based minigames you unlock, my favourite being the Whack-A-Mole inspired level Bonce Tappin'. Tarsier Studios also predicted Ice Age 5 4 years before it released. Expanding further on these minigames was the arcade. After every world you complete in the story, you unlock a new game, and these are all really fun. They're not too dissimilar to the separate unlockable minigames, but they all have multiple levels and get more complex as they go on. They all saved your progress, so you didn't have to complete an entire minigame and all its levels in one sitting. They're a welcome addition, and I wish they returned in later games. Following the formula well, LBPVita also received DLC. The only exclusive DLC to my memory is the Marvel minigames. They aren't massively impressive, but they're a fun distraction and similar to the stuff in the arcade. Also, the game was later re-released with the LittleBigPlanet Marvel Superheroes Edition. This came with a bunch of Marvel costumes and the Marvel minigame DLCs on the cartridge, which is very good for preservation. I'm so glad that they did it on the cart and not just a download code. But it isn't the exclusive DLC that matters here. When the PS Vita launched, Sony began the cross-buy initiative. All the DLC you bought on the PS3 was free for you to download on the Vita, and vice versa. The coolest part about LittleBigPlanet's cross-buy implementation was a certain DLC we all know and love. On the PS Vita, this DLC was entirely different. It followed the same formula, with the Watchtower hub world, the level themes were the same, it included the Hero Cape and Wardrobe material, but the levels themselves were changed to fit LBPVita's mechanics, most notably the touchscreen. The Memorizer logic piece, which allowed the DLC to save your progress to make the hub world possible, was also just a feature in LBPVita. It was the Memorizer chip which made the arcade minigames save your progress. The Memorizer chip debuted in this game, and I think it's awesome that it made its way into DLC for LittleBigPlanet 2. When I first played the Vita version of the DC level pack, it really took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it to be different at all, I just assumed it would be the PS3 version just on the Vita, but it gave a breath of fresh air to my favourite DLC that I'd already played countless times. So, that's LittleBigPlanet Vita. I truly think this game is a masterpiece much like LittleBigPlanet 2, but the lack of LBP 1 and 2 item transfer made it feel a bit barren for creation. I tried making a level way back when I first played the game, but I often wanted certain stickers or materials that were from an older game. But because there's no item transfer, you just can't get those stuff. But if that is the only complaint I have, then it speaks volumes to the quality on display here, and on a handheld too. If you can afford a Vita, I strongly recommend getting LittleBigPlanet as well. And if you already have a Vita, you've probably already played it. And if you have a Vita and you haven't played it, you're dumb and stupid and silly and stupid and dumb. The game sold 1.38 million according to VG charts, placing it in the top 3 Vita games. The average review score sits around 9 out of 10, and it is fully deserving of it. It went on to be nominated for 4 awards and won every single one of them. We are 4 games deep, and all of them boast high sales, high review scores and accolades. LittleBigPlanet was cemented as one of PlayStation's all-time best franchises. Before we discuss the next console entry, I want to take a quick look at Run Sackboy Run. It was an endless runner, but not in the Temple Run or Subway Surfers style. This game was a side-scroller like the main games, and you had to run away from the Negativitron whilst avoiding all the level hazards in place. I played this a lot when it launched, and when I got my Vita, I decided to download it there and get all the trophies too. It's a fantastic translation of the console games, retaining the art style, music, and even the costumes and stickers. In your run, the stickers would occasionally pop up, and collecting 4 stickers in a set would grant you new prizes. I loved this game and played it for a long time. When it launched, you could download the rare Run Sackboy Run t-shirt for free, but if you missed out, there was always the exclusive DLC you could earn with the special sticker sets in this game. Unlocking all 4 stickers in the special sticker set would send an email to the account you registered your PSN account with, containing a code to redeem in the PlayStation Store for your costume. These consisted of the same rare t-shirt at launch, but also a few extra costumes I'll get onto later. There was another mobile game, Ultimate Sackboy, which had a soft launch in April 2021 before a full release in February 2023, and it's just terrible. Unlike Run Sackboy Run, this is one of the carbon copy style of Temple Run kind of games. It's bland, boring, and nothing other than a money grab. After this game released, it made me appreciate Run Sackboy Run a lot more, and that's all this game is good for. Just talking about it makes me feel disgusting, so let's get back to the console releases. After 4 games with 2 back-to-back masterpieces that excel for different reasons, what do? A brand new game that shakes up what we think we know, like God of War 2018? A change in direction, like God of War 2018? Or the mystical third option, a kart racer, like God of War? In November 2012, LittleBigPlanet Karting released just over 9 months after LittleBigPlanet Vita's launch. There is a non-zero chance that someone somewhere in the world fell pregnant on the release day of LittleBigPlanet Vita and gave birth to that baby on the release day of LittleBigPlanet Karting. LBPKarting was developed by United Front Games and San Diego Studio, in collaboration with Media Molecule once again. Both of the new studios had previously worked on a title released in May 2010 called Mod Nation Racers. United Front developed the PS3 version, whilst San Diego worked on the PSP version. Mod Nation Racers was, if any clue by the title, a kart racer series. They had a single-player story mode where the player unlocks many customization options for their characters and karts, as well as tools for a creation mode where you could design your own tracks and upload them for others to play online. It sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? Yes, Mod Nation Racers had the same play, create, share motif of LittleBigPlanet. So if any studio was going to work on an LBP kart racer, it made sense for it to be United Front and San Diego Studios. Originally, LBPKarting was meant to be a sequel to Mod Nation Racers, but Sony wanted it to be a game with a much bigger franchise to boost sales. Despite karting being on a different engine to the mainline games, it still felt like LittleBigPlanet because of the strong creative identity, as well as a perfect translation of the handcrafted art style. But it wasn't just the style of LBP that was successfully emulated. The soundtrack to this game is also phenomenal. It remixes a lot of tracks from LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2, and this might be an incredibly hot take, but I think LittleBigPlanet Karting has one of the best original soundtracks in the series. The rearrangements all fit the high-speed, zany action of a kart racer without losing any of the charm, but there's no point in a game that's got everything going for it except the gameplay. What, you thought this game was going to suck? Far from it! LittleBigPlanet Karting is a ton of fun. It has your standard kart racer weapons, sure, but how it formats those is a little different. There are 3 categories of weapons available: the green manual weapons, the red missile weapons, and the blue stealth weapons. They're all pretty self-explanatory, where the manual weapons you aim, the missile weapons you don't have to aim, they just track the enemy, and the blue stealth weapons turn you into the weapon. Though most of the weapons feel derivative in nature to other kart racers, they all have their practical uses, and landing hits on opponents feels incredibly rewarding thanks to the pop-up messages that tell you when you score a hit. Although the weapons just aren't anything game-changing, LittleBigPlanet Karting had some of the most interesting tracks in kart races at that time due to the dynamic environments and additions to the standard kart racing formula. Mario Kart 8 and Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled have since raised the bar, but it doesn't undermine the accomplishments that LittleBigPlanet Karting made. The enhanced platforming features introduced in LittleBigPlanet 2 made a grand return, most notably the grapple hook and bounce pads. Every race feels alive and exciting because of how well it implements these mechanics, but there's more than just races here. The game follows the same formula of story mode that all the traditional LBP games do. It follows a story with the antagonists this time being called the Horde, a group of scavengers who want to take all of the Craftverse's prizes and collectibles for themselves, with no other reason than just hoarding them. It's not complex like LBPVita, or a tale of grand scale like LittleBigPlanet 2, but it still ties into the general theme of a villain trying to steal creativity for themselves. I admire that even with a kart racing spin-off, the developers took care in creating a story that fits the narrative juxtapositions of the mainline games. Excluding the final world, which is just one level, the game is split into 6 separate worlds, with 3 to 6 main levels each, all including unique side missions too. These could be in the form of a battle mode, trying to get the highest score, or a capture the flag style game, getting the eggs into your basket to extend the timer whilst a dragon tries to slow you down by shooting fireballs at you. The game still has the wacky fun of LittleBigPlanet despite being a completely different genre of game. And with the bounce pads and grapple hook adding a light sense of platforming to the races, it ends up feeling like one of the best adapted kart racers. LittleBigPlanet Karting is one of the most fun single-player kart races available, and I'd argue that it was the best before being dethroned by Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled in 2019. Don't get me wrong, I love Mario Kart, and I'm not pretending for even a second that it isn't the golden standard of mascot kart racer. But none of the games ever had substantial single-player content, with the exception of Mario Kart DS's mission mode. But even that doesn't hold any weight to LittleBigPlanet Karting's story. However, that isn't the only aspect of the game. If you remember, Mod Nation Racers boasted its own Create mode, and that makes a grand return here too. It is practically the same as Mod Nation's, which isn't surprising since LittleBigPlanet Karting is built off of Mod Nation, but there's no need to fix what isn't broken. It's too bad they broke it. It wasn't too difficult to make a simple track, but the skilled creators who wanted to make complex tracks struggled. This wasn't due to any limitations on the Create mode by design, no, it was due to frequent crashes and freezes in the track creation. It was an issue more common than it should have been, and whilst the passionate creators pushed through and uploaded some really high quality stuff, it sadly meant that a lot of people lost patience, and either didn't finish their tracks, made them a lot simpler, or reverted back to Mod Nation or LittleBigPlanet for their creative fixes. The community of this game suffered quickly. Nobody wanted to make tracks with its glaring issues, meaning far less community output than what there could have been, meaning there isn't much to play online, meaning people don't play it online, and then you just go back. It is just a negative downward spiral because of the game's glaring issues of crashes and freezes. When the create function is flawed, there is an inevitable butterfly effect where the share function is flawed too. I commend anyone who seriously made levels in this game, because it quickly became a mental battle more than anything else. I can't help but adore the main story and how well it copied over everything that made LittleBigPlanet special, but 2/3 of the package were broken, and to my recollection, it was never patched. Even if it was, nobody cared anymore. Another huge drawback was the object importing, or lack thereof. Because LittleBigPlanet was on an entirely different engine, it meant all the stickers, costumes and other goodies you collected in LBP 1 and 2 weren't importable. Like LBPVita, this does make sense. Vita is on entirely different hardware, and karting is an entirely different gameplay engine. However, a positive side to this is that all the DLC costumes you bought were still compatible. But Matt, I hear you ask, if it's a different engine, how is the DLC compatible? And if the DLC is compatible, why aren't the other items? A very good question indeed, with a remarkably impressive answer. I'm not sure whether it was United Front, San Diego Studios, or both, but the reason the DLC is compatible is because every single DLC costume asset was remade for the new engine. Wow. I mean, they could have just said, nah, it's a different engine, sucks to suck, but instead they remade hundreds of costumes, thousands of assets. Knowing the effort that went into this for cross-compatible DLC to be possible will always make me appreciate that they're included. Karting did have a few of its own DLCs, but the only interesting one to me was the Tron Legacy Kart Pack. The famous one was a pre-order bonus of a Kevin Butler costume, and he kinda looks like Saul Goodman. LittleBigPlanet Karting was the first major LittleBigPlanet game to receive mixed reviews. It mainly ranged from 5 to 7 out of 10, but despite the polarizing reviews, the game was still nominated for Racing Game of the Year at the 16th Annual Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. Though sadly, but not surprisingly, this was the first and only console LittleBigPlanet game to not win any awards. I think the game is strongest in its story mode, and it is a ton of fun, but I can't lie and say the online and create mode were good. If the track creation was stable at launch, it really could have been a must-have for the PlayStation 3, but the big issues were never patched out, and the game died quickly, leading to the first server closure for the series on July 2nd, 2016, 4 weeks before the PSP servers shut down. LBPKarting became the lowest performing game in the series in both reviews and sales figures, with only 880,000 copies sold. It's the only LittleBigPlanet game to sell less than 1 million copies, and in contrast, the best-selling game in the series is the one you wouldn't expect, the most polarizing game in the series. LittleBigPlanet 3 was finally unveiled in 2014 and released November of the same year for the PS3 and PS4. This game also wasn't developed by Media Molecule, instead being handed over to Sumo Digital as well as numerous other teams, including the return of Tarsier Studios who developed LittleBigPlanet Vita. Although Media Molecule weren't primarily involved in LBP3's development, they did provide assistance to Sumo Digital early on, and the game's design director, Damien Hosen, has spoken about how important their input was. Those personal insights we got from them early on were invaluable in shaping how we made the rest of the game. I remember being on holiday with my family at the time of the trailer's release, and I watched it over and over, excited at all the new additions it showed off. I got the game for Christmas that year and immediately played it with my sisters, and we fell in love with it. We got a PS4 in 2015, and I wanted the game on PS4 instead. It was sometime around the Easter break, and we'd planned to go shopping one day in the week. I tried my best to get the Platinum Trophy for LBP3 on the PS3 before that day. All I needed to complete was a level that required 4 players. But this is where I experienced the incredibly buggy nature of the game for the first time. I only played with one of my sisters before, and it worked great. But dragging my other 2 sisters in for this level, it was constantly slowing down and even crashing. My oldest sister gave up in trying to complete it after a whole day of reloading the game and the level. but to this day I still don't have the Platinum Trophy, and I'm just one trophy away! When we went shopping, I took my copy of LBP3 to game, and asked if I could exchange it for a PS4 version, and it only cost me an extra £1. I'm not sure why that memory sticks with me so much, but it was such a relief that I didn't have to buy a new copy of it. When we got home, I didn't even play it. I spent the whole evening downloading all my DLC thanks to the cross-buy that was also present in LBPVita. And when I finally got to play the game again, yeah, it was LittleBigPlanet 3, but we ran into another instance of the game being a broken mess. I managed to import my LittleBigPlanet 2 profile no problem, but my sisters wouldn't import at all, and every attempt to do so would result in, you guessed it, a crash. So in the end, we just gave up and she played as a guest account, but it felt really unfair. The profile wasn't corrupted, it still launched on LBP2 fine, we even tried creating a new backup, but nothing worked. For some reason it just would not import her profile. LittleBigPlanet 3 is the game I have the most memories of regarding its release, but I know this is getting quite anecdotal, so I'll get on to the actual game. LittleBigPlanet 3 takes place on a new world called Bunker, and Sackboy is brought there by a character named Newton. He wants to release the 3 Titans to allow more creativity to Bunker, but they end up possessing and corrupting him instead, turning him into the game's antagonist. Long before the Negativitron terrorized Craftworld, the Titans existed, and they feasted on creativity and imagination. They were stopped by the 3 heroes of Bunkum, Oddsock, Toggle and Swoop, and now Sackboy has to reawaken them to help stop the Titans again. In each main world, we rescue a new hero, and yeah, they're really fun, but I will get onto those later. We end up saving Newton, take down the Titans, and save Bunkum. Much like LBP2, it's a fairly simple plot, but again, it has a really great theme about saving creativity from a villain which threatens it. I know I've said this a lot, but it's just not on the level of LBPVita, but it's one of the most entertaining stories thanks to the cast. They got Hugh Laurie to play Newton. Hugh frickin' Laurie, the guy who plays the cockroach in Monsters vs. Aliens and Stuart Little's dad, and he absolutely kills it.
Come, Titans, let us make Bunkum Bunkum! Sorry, Bunkum. Slight change of plan. I think I will destroy you instead. Farewell, dear friend.
Every scene with Newton is just fantastic. He really steals the show and is one of the most memorable characters in the entire series. In the second world, Manglewood, you're introduced to Marlon Random, and he's voiced by Nolan North, Mr. Dude Raider himself, and again, he is fantastic. The cast of LittleBigPlanet 3 is the best of the series, not only in the story characters, but the voices of them too. But what about the gameplay that ties the story together? LBP3 gets a bad reputation for numerous reasons which we'll definitely delve into, but honestly, LittleBigPlanet 3 is just as much of an evolution that LittleBigPlanet 2 was. 3 layers? How about 16 layers? The depth of the levels was massively increased and it made for some really creative stuff. There was a new tool called the Layer Launcher, very similar to the bounce pads, but instead of launching you up, they launch you backwards and forwards. Soaring through the air with these is endlessly fun, and it felt incredibly thrilling going back and forth on a whim. I honestly think 10 layers would have been fine and wouldn't impact anything, but also wouldn't it make sense if it were a multiple 3, like 12 or 9 layers? Flying through the air with layer launchers is super fun, but most of the levels only utilised 3 layers at a time, then flung you forward 8 layers to use 3 more in the next segment. There are a few levels which do use the layers really well, putting you into the background further and further before bringing you all the way from the back to the front, making for a well-earned layer launch. But overall, I'd say about 1/3 of the levels use it to its best. One of these levels that fully realise its potential is Furry Soul's Hot Coals. You control a Yeti from a top-down perspective, and using the layers in an entirely different perspective is what allows the level to have the depth it does. This type of mechanic wasn't new. LBP2's community used it a lot, one of my favourites being a wolf level with a remix of Lost Woods from Ocarina of Time, but with LittleBigPlanet 2's 3 layers, it meant there was very little depth to the world in this perspective. The only exception to that is the trees, which were used using glitch material that has infinite layer depth. But Furry Soul's Hot Coals adds so much in its level, with unique mechanics like the trampoline, and I think it's an excellent showcase of just how much the 16 layers can create something entirely new that would not have been possible otherwise. Another place they're used effectively is in the hub worlds. Yes, the hub world idea from the DC Comics level pack make a grand return, and they are amazing in this game. They also have a navigator, so it's hard to find yourselves lost, and you can track various things in the world, most notably the mech's name level, a costume store, and other side levels that are dotted around the area. The entirety of LittleBigPlanet 3 feels very derived from the DC pack, not only with the hub worlds, but also two of the new characters, Oddsock and Swoop. Oddsock could wall jump, and Swoop could glide. It was just the hero cape, but now with a flap button. Sure, I love expanding the character roster, but not like this. LittleBigPlanet 2 made the water from the Pirates of the Caribbean pack a feature, and the Creatinator was an enhanced version of the Paintinator. So it made sense that LittleBigPlanet 3 might carry over some DLC features, and it does do that with the wormhole from the cross-controller pack. But splitting the DC features across new characters meant Sackboy didn't have those features anymore, and there weren't really anything else to the new characters other than just one ability. I do love all three of them, but they also really annoy me, because two of them were features we already had, and Toggle could change size from large to small. They're all really fun, but they feel like power-ups. In this game, we have a brand new side character, Zoom Zoom, who runs the costume shop I mentioned earlier. He's voiced by Simon Greenall, a very familiar voice to any fellow Brits out there. LittleBigPlanet 3 has Stuart Little's dad, Nathan Drake, and now Alexander the Meerkat from Compare the Meerkat adverts. In the hub worlds, there's a new type of point system, the collectibles. You can find Zoom Zoom's shop and he'll trade these in exchange for costumes. I always found them to be a unique way to integrate a clearly distinct type of point that's continuous and different to the regular score bubbles. Most of the time, you wanted costumes for Sackboy since that's who you spend 90% of the game with, and who you spent the entire series with. So every time you get a costume for one of the new characters, it just feels like a wasted costume that you wanted for Sackboy instead. This was only exacerbated in the DLC, and I think the best example here is the Frozen Character Pack. This DLC existed for both LBP2 and LBP3, but there was one key difference in them: Sven. In LittleBigPlanet 2, Sven was a costume for Sackboy, but in LittleBigPlanet 3, he was a costume for Oddsock, and Sackboy's version of the costume didn't exist. It always annoyed me because most of the story levels were playable with Sackboy, most of the community levels were playable with Sackboy. So why would I want to pay money for a costume for a character that is barely utilised, let alone completely nuking a costume for Sackboy in favour of one of these characters? And it's a shame because I do like these characters, but all they do in the grand scheme of things is take away costumes and abilities from Sackboy. Yes, Swoop upgrades the hero cape by allowing you to gain height with flying, but that could have been an upgraded version of the hero cape in the same way the Creatinator upgraded the Paintinator. There are a few new gameplay tools introduced in LittleBigPlanet 3 that make the gameplay flow seamlessly so well. I mentioned the layer launchers before, but another way to change layers is with the slide. This is pretty self-explanatory, letting Sackboy slide down from the back layers towards the front ones. They still allow you to move side to side. They're slower, but a more engaging way to change layers. There's also a new option for vertical movement, the climbing material. This uses the same button as the grab and lets you climb. There isn't much else to say other than that, and whilst it's a simple mechanic, it's one that feels like a natural inclusion. More movement options are always a good thing, especially when they're so well integrated into the core moveset. The final noteworthy addition is the
Velociporters.
a two-way teleporter that carries your momentum. The way they open when you get close and make that noise when you pass through them is just so quirky and silly. It's easily one of the best additions to the game. So, what new power-ups does Sackboy get? Throughout the story you unlock 5 new power-ups, with one unlocking in each world of the game, and the final one being an optional unlockable. The first power-up you unlock is the Pumpinator, a gun that can suck and blow get your mind out of the gutter. The Pumpinator is a really fun tool to use, especially in Newton's airship, the level it's introduced in. You use its functions to push blocks away or pull them towards you to open new paths or spin wheels that open doors. One thing I haven't mentioned about the power-ups in any of the games is just how snappy they are. They never slow you down, they all utilise only 1 or 2 buttons at most, and because of this, even the less interesting ones like the Grabinators, they never feel like they're hindering the gameplay. The next power-up is the Blink Ball and Manglewood, and this one, whilst limited in its use, is very fun. It's introduced in one of my favourite levels, High Stakes Heist. This level takes place in a casino with guards trying to stop you from reaching one of the marbles needed to rescue Oddsock. The Blink Ball allows you to fire a ball at any Blink Ball material, instantly teleporting you to that pad. It introduces it in a safe way, escalating throughout the level, allowing you to bypass lasers and get behind enemies, before needing you to fire it ahead whilst outrunning exploding bombs on the ground, hiding behind rolling poker chips, all whilst the heavy's How You Like Me Now blares in the background. It is such a thrilling end to the level, and it makes for one of the most memorable levels in the game for me. The third power-up is the Hook Hat, and this is an odd one. The level it is introduced in, Go Loco, is fantastic, and if you haven't noticed by now, this is going to be a recurring theme. You have to climb to the top of a mountainous dragon mech, jumping on bounce pads, climbing up to get higher and higher, and slide on hook hat rails at breakneck speeds, dynamically changing between all the layers, weaving back and forth through all the mechanical parts of the robot. Go Loco is a level that has such a masterful flow to it, and it makes it my favourite level in the game. It's just the Hook Hat is a bit of a weird power-up. You just kind of slide on rails, and that's kind of it. But again, the sense of speed you get, the flow that you can maintain with it, is really fun, so I think that makes up for how bizarre this power-up is. The final main power-up is the Boost Boots from the level Mask Maker's Tower, and yes, it's a great level. The Boost Boots act as your typical platformer dash, letting you dash once in the air to extend your jump, with reset points letting you dash again. It's a really fun gadget to use, and the level mixes in layer-changing platformers with velociporters that slowly get more challenging, and whilst it isn't quite a thrill ride like Go Loco, it excels in being 5 minutes of precision platforming. The final power-up is the optional one, the Illuminator. You unlock it at any of Zoom Zoom's shops throughout the game after buying 5 items, and it's a torch. If you shine it at any of the distorted picture frames scattered across the levels, they'll give you some prizes. That's it. There isn't even a level set in the darkness where you have to use it to light up the way. Like, it's the very basic idea of a power-up that emits light. How do you not do that? It's the only power-up in the game that I do not care for, because all it does is replace the sticker triggers. But what made the sticker triggers special is you could identify rough shape of the sticker you needed, and when you finally find that in a level later on, you can get excited about going back there. The sticker triggers incentivized exploration. The Illuminator does none of that, it's just a replacement for them, and it's kind of boring. But what makes the power-ups particularly unique in LittleBigPlanet 3 is the Sack Pocket. By tapping circle, you can select any power-up whenever you want. You can go back to levels with your new power-ups and find hidden areas, or use the Boost Boots to skip certain parts, or save yourself from falling to death, which is especially helpful in trying to ace all the levels. Now, remember how all the levels across the entire series are made with the in-game create mode? LittleBigPlanet 3 takes it a step further. Say hello to the power-up creator.
Hello.
This takes creativity to the next level, and of course the most prominent things made with this was different types of weapons, and swords and guns primarily. There weren't a lot of unique power-ups in the community from what I remember, but one I do recall is a blaster which made any object invisible for a set time. Whether there was any level for this is a mystery to me now, but I remember screwing around with it on the moon with my friends. If you haven't been able to tell yet, pretty much all the levels are fantastic. The game is so fun with all its new additions and ideas, and it may be the shortest story mode in the series, but I stand by it being one of the most varied. This shines as you explore the hub worlds, where you can find characters that offer side levels, and these are super fun. A few of these use another unique power-up I didn't mention, one that isn't freely selectable since it would break the entire game. This here is the Puppet power-up. It allows you to use the Create mode features in regular play mode, and the side missions it's accompanied by are remarkably fun. These are contraption challenges, involving a vehicle to customize and trying to get the highest distance with it. As you get further with your vehicle, you unlock new parts that can help it get further along. It is a really fun gameplay loop. The Puppet power-up also replaces the traditional tutorials with the new Puppet Academy. You go through levels with Da Vinci and Victoria from LBP2 as they teach you about the creation tools in the game. Yes, the story mode is short, but I think it makes up for it with the Puppet Academy, by far the most interesting tutorial in the series. In 2016, the game was updated to feature community challenges. These were high-score survival minigames with leaderboards, and would change every few weeks on a rotation. At the time, I wasn't playing the game as much, because I was at those teenage years where suddenly everything you liked when you were younger was bad and cringe, and I was instead grinding out Black Ops 3 like a real man. But this update brought me back to LittleBigPlanet again. It was awesome having new challenges to play every other week, especially because they were so endlessly addictive. On paper, it's all really great. Similar to LittleBigPlanet karting, it excels in the offline department, but similar to LittleBigPlanet karting, the cracks are ever present. I previously spoke about my own early experience with the game, terrible performance with 4 players, and crashing when trying to import my sister's profile. Another issue I had was profile corruption. Do not ask LittleBigPlanet fans about profile corruption. This was something that affected every fan, whether it was themselves or helping out a friend through the story after theirs corrupted. I personally didn't mind when mine corrupted because I loved the story, but that didn't change the game being unstable, and whilst patches released that made it less of an issue, it was still always a looming threat. I remember after one update, one of my saved pods just wouldn't load. It would either be stuck trying to load it and softlock the game, or it would crash the game entirely. Community levels were absolutely amazing, but good luck playing one. The menu was slow and it took forever to load into levels. Would you believe me if I said it crashed on numerous occasions when loading into a level? Nah, that doesn't sound like something LittleBigPlanet 3 would do. It's a perfectly polished game. You could get stuck at the top of your pod with no way to get down, soft-locking your entire profile since you could not access the controller to play any levels. And if you didn't back up your save, well, tough luck buddy, you'll have to delete your entire save and start from scratch. The multiplayer just sometimes wouldn't work. You'd join their game but it wouldn't actually spawn and you'd just be a spectator to your friend's game. I could go on for a long time listing all the game-breaking LittleBigPlanet 3 glitches, and yes, most of these were patched, but some of them continued to be an issue, and ones which were patched shouldn't have been an issue in the first place. But one of my favourite bugs involves a DLC costume. In the Sackbot tweak menu of the LBP3 beta, there was a placeholder image that read "Fix Me Hook Hat," and this somehow made its way into the retail release. It immediately became a huge meme in the community, so much so that community members Glitchmaster7 and Technological made it a shirt to buy. When a Sumo Digital employee came in to work wearing the shirt, it caught everyone's attention, and they made the shirt a free DLC, which is still available today. Future Matt here, coming in with a quick edit. Everything was as accurate as I could make it at the time of scripting and recording, but in that time, the community went through something drastic. On October 8th, 2024, it was announced that LittleBigPlanet 3 and all its DLC would be delisted on October 31st, 2024. So no, the Hook Hat shirt is not available for download to this day as I stated. But is that entirely true? The following footage is recorded on January 10th, 2025, 71 days after the delisting of the game and its DLC. And yet, I'm able to purchase and download the Tearaway Mini-Pack, a DLC I didn't own. A lot of the DLC still seems to be for sale, including some licensed DLC too, such as the DC Costume Packs, Level Kit, and Season Pass. Of course, this isn't all the DLC. There's no Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon stuff, or the Back to the Future packs, and many others which would make this list drag on. But this only asks more questions. For clarity, I live in the UK. Is some DLC still available in other regions? Is the game still available digitally in other regions? This was supposed to be a global shutdown to all purchases of the game and DLC, and yet I managed to buy DLC and I still can as of January 10th, 2025. It truly baffles me that what was meant to be a farewell to the game with a specified date hasn't entirely gone ahead, but this isn't actually that surprising, because the exact same thing has happened before. When the Disney DLC was delisted in December 2017, there was still some regions that had access to most of the DLC still. One that I remember is the Singapore store. And even to this day, packs such as the Incredibles costume pack still exist on that region of the store. This leads me to believe the DLC still available now will most likely remain available for a long time to come. I want to begin a community effort with this. I've decided to start a documentation of what games or DLC are available in each region, and I implore as many people across the world to join in with this. The more regions we can research for, the more accurate this document can become. I've created a Discord server for this DLC hunt, which will have a link pinned in the comments if you wish to join in this. Anyways, back to the video. With the constant profile corruptions and the broken online, a lot of the community were disappointed in the game, because no matter how good the story is, we face the same issue as LittleBigPlanet karting. Only 1/3 of the game is actually good. But in LittleBigPlanet 3's case, the profile corruption meant even that wasn't entirely safe. I don't believe this is purely the developer's fault though. It's not entirely proven, however everyone speculates the game to have been rushed for the holiday season, something which most likely would have been imposed by Sony. With how fondly Sumo Digital have spoke about their time with Media Molecule, it sounds like they had a ton of passion for the game, but perhaps they also bit off more than they could chew with how much the game added. The DLC makes quite a return though, and while it's not as great as the masterful DLC in LBP2, it was definitely still a prevalent factor. Most of the costume packs were all great, but they had the issue I mentioned before. I don't want costumes for Oddsock, Toggle or Swoop, and they feel like wasted costumes which could have instead been for Sackboy. Run Sackboy Run's other unlockable costumes, which I alluded to earlier, were for each of the playable characters, and I thought it was awesome to encourage people to play that game to get rewards in LittleBigPlanet 3. There were also a few Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network DLCs, most prominently the TMNT costume pack, SpongeBob level kit and costume packs, the Adventure Time level kit and costume pack, and the Steven Universe costume pack. Now, Adventure Time and SpongeBob level kits should be amazing, right? These weren't your traditional level packs with multiple levels and a boss fight. These were just a single extended level that handed out the prizes along the path. They seemed very boring and a far departure from the frequent and fantastic level packs of LittleBigPlanet 2. However, there was one traditional level pack that was pretty good. The Journey Home. This DLC took place after the main events of the story and followed Oddsock, Toggle and Swoop going through some of the older level themes from LBP 1 and 2. These were great levels with amazing remixes, and you also got a costume of the King from LittleBigPlanet 1 for Sackboy, which was pretty neat. It also added the Springinator, a new power-up for Oddsock that allowed him to bounce really high, and it was a pretty fun power-up to use in conjunction with slides and bounce pads. But the DLC is only 3 levels. One for each new character. So because it only featured in a single level, it didn't leave much of an impact. Overall, it is a great DLC. The new characters don't have enough levels in the main game, so getting a new level with each one of them was awesome, but I do think it should have had one final level with Sackboy to truly feel like a finale to this story. I hoped a long while ago that there might be another DLC that gave Toggle and Swoop some new power-ups too, but nothing ever released. And it feels weird that Oddsock was the only character to be given such a spotlight with the Springinator. Okay, so I'm only recording footage right now, and as you can see, profile corruption. I was literally recording footage for Bonafide Ride, the toggle level and the journey home, and it's corrupt. So I've got to delete the journey home progress. And this is exactly what I mean about the game not being stable. All of my adventure progress here is gone now. So that's cool, having these issues and having to deal with them, maybe getting frustrated because I have to redo this. You know, it all comes with LittleBigPlanet 3 as a game, and in all its flaws, I still love it, and I'm getting nostalgic about a game crashing. I won't be able to record the other levels for the DLC now, because I don't really want to go through this again, because Journey Home always had problems with file corruption for me personally, especially the first level, and I remember this happening frequently. It took me 4 or 5 tries to actually beat this DLC. I had to replay the first level so many times. Okay, no, so I've still got Oddsock Springinator here, so I can show this off quickly. Oh, I've still got the Sven costume for when I was talking about the Frozen character. Yeah, you can bounce. But yeah, anyway, back to the video. The other DLC pack was the Back to the Future level kit. If you live under a rock and you're not aware, October 21st, 2015 was Back to the Future Day, as that's the day Marty McFly travels to in Back to the Future Part 2. This day had lots of collaborations: Pepsi, Nike, Rocket League, and of course LittleBigPlanet 3. We were treated to 2 costume packs as well as the level kit, and regrettably, I never actually bought this, but as I said earlier, I stopped playing LittleBigPlanet 3 in my teen years before the 2016 update, and by the time I got back into LittleBigPlanet 3, I didn't really care about it. And whilst I like the Back to the Future films, I just found other DLC more appealing. However, there was one reason I wanted it. We get a brand new power-up, and this time it's Marty McFly's hoverboard for Sackboy. I managed to play community levels featuring it, and it was pretty awesome, but I can't speak on it objectively in any sense. It allowed you to travel up walls for a brief period, gain a larger jump, grind on the same rails that the hook hat makes use of. Most of the community levels I played with the hoverboard didn't really implement it all too well, if I'm being honest, so I never truly got a feel for it, but I'm sure the DLC pack would have done great in that regard. So that is an extensive look at the highs and lows of LittleBigPlanet 3. I still truly love this game, but its flaws are too apparent to hold it close to LittleBigPlanet 2 or Vita. It could have been the best game in this series if it weren't for the blatant problems that plagued the game. Sumo Digital proved they could make truly amazing levels, some of the best in the entire series, and expand even further on the gameplay formula. But it doesn't matter how many ingredients you put on a pizza if the dough isn't cooked properly. The game received average review scores of around 7 out of 10, and it still went on to win Best Family Game of the Year at the 18th Annual DICE Awards. But surprisingly, LittleBigPlanet 3 was the best-selling game in this series, rounding off with 5.4 million units, roughly 2 million more than LittleBigPlanet 2. Despite LittleBigPlanet 3's more critical reception from the critics and fans alike, Sumo Digital weren't finished yet. With the upcoming announcement of the PS5 as well as first-party games in the launch year, we had one thing on our minds: a LittleBigPlanet 4 that used the PS5's immense power for the most creative game yet. Some fans had given up hope, but some of us were deep in denial. Sony wouldn't just let one of their most iconic mascots fizzle out into obscurity, right? We waited, and then... it wasn't LittleBigPlanet. It was a 3D platformer? Many fans were confused, myself included. Did Sumo think the series needed 3D to be pushed forward? Or was it just a litmus test to see if Sackboy is still a relevant gaming icon? Either way, Sackboy was back after 6 long years, and that's all that mattered. Many fans were critical of the new gameplay style and the confirmation of no create mode, but as time passed, I began to get really excited. The Go team who composed most of LBP1's memorable tracks returned for some of the soundtrack. The handcrafted art style looked incredible. You can see every strand coming from Sackboy, who looks so fuzzy and fluffy. There were new power-ups, new characters in the story, and ditching the in-game create mode meant the game could be fully developed in Unreal Engine. And the cutscenes look so good. Don't get me wrong, I love the create mode, it is the backbone of LittleBigPlanet. But this isn't LittleBigPlanet, it's a spin-off. It made sense to go all in and make Craftworld feel the most alive it's ever been. It was the second PS5 game I bought, and I was happy to buy it brand new to support Sumo and the franchise. Moving on to the gameplay, it feels very similar to Super Mario 3D World. It's a 3D platformer with the same kind of zoomed out camera angle intended for multiplayer, the final bonus world with the tough final level, and every world throws so many new ideas at you without ever slowing down, yet nothing ever feels underbaked. You have so many unique worlds, starting in the Himalayas, then an underwater crab world, a futuristic sci-fi theme. Sure, they're all somewhat standard styles to have, but the bog-standard platformer pipeline of grass to desert to beach to lava wasn't played out here, and I appreciate Sumo for shaking that up. They all feel like worlds that could exist in a LittleBigPlanet game, and I love that it still feels connected. The gameplay is really solid too, with a whole array of moves you can chain together to cross large gaps that don't seem possible but actually are. With the spinning jump, the dive and the flutter, you can cross some insane gaps, and pulling off these tricks is super fun to do. The controls are so finely tuned and it feels so good to play. There's a visible skill gap between someone who just started playing and someone who got the Platinum Trophy. One of my favourite inclusions was the Knitted Night Trials. These were short, bite-sized platforming challenges you could unlock by finding the hidden golden cubes in certain levels. They weren't too difficult on their own, but the best thing a platformer can do is reward you with more platformer. The final trial, however, was a gauntlet. It was all the previous trials stitched together as one. A long, grueling, 10-minute behemoth of a challenge that took me months to complete, but my god was popping that Platinum Trophy satisfying. Also, while we're on the topic, if anyone is struggling with that trial, my advice is take your time and do not rush or make risky shortcuts. The time is very forgiving for the top ranking, so the main thing you need to do is focus on getting to the end. Many features from LittleBigPlanet also make a return. The bounce pads, grabbable sponge, score bubbles and prize bubbles, collectibles, and by proxy Zum Zum, the meerkat is back, baby!
Alors, have you anything in mind for today's purchases?
To compare health insurance before June 30 and avoid the health tax.
A Big Adventure also introduced new power-ups. The first is the Whirl Tool, a boomerang item that lets you grab points and bubbles from afar, as well as use it to take out enemies, and teleport Sackboy in a similar fashion to the Blink Ball. The Claw String is very similar to the Grapple Hook, but it can also be used to pull out new platforms and grab objects to throw for some score bubbles or throw at enemies to take them out. The final power-up is the Plasma Boots. These let you hover in the air and fire a projectile to defeat enemies. Sackboy does have a basic attack in this game, and it makes sense for a 3D platformer since it isn't as easy to land on an enemy in a 3D game compared to a 2D one. But the Plasma Boots let you take down enemies safely from a long range, and you can charge it up for a stronger attack. All the power-ups are so well assimilated into the level design, and it makes using them a delight. A Big Adventure doesn't shy away from its origins, and it still feels like a LittleBigPlanet game through to the end, and that is massively helped by the creative power-ups. But this is also clear in its story. We have a new villain called Vex, turning Craftworld from a place of creativity to one of nightmares. He's voiced by Richard E. Grant, and damn does he put on a performance.
Look at the witless walking sack now, lost and confused. Maybe the plans you stole will tell you what to do next.
Every cutscene with Vex is gold, and when we get to the final world in the game, he has fully taken over Craftworld, and his constant narration is threatening but so enjoyable. Another character with a voice in this game is Sackboy? A lot of people hated this, but it's literally just a few sound effects when you make a jump or dive. I can understand why people dislike it. Sackboy was intended to be a blank slate, and if he needed a voice he would have had one to begin with. But guys, it's a spin-off. He doesn't even have proper voice line. This isn't like the 100% ending for Crash 4. Overall, the story is fairly simple. The Vita really is the outlier for having a phenomenal story, but even then that only comes together at the end. The stories are just plain dumb fun, and A Big Adventures is exactly that. I haven't even talked about the levels yet, and they're so entertaining. They're not too difficult, the game is only meant to be cozy fun. Some levels take inspiration from Rayman Legends' musical levels, where everything is timed to a song, and they are stupidly fun. You go through a level while Toxic by Britney Spears plays. Peak gaming. I played this right after I platinumed Astro's Playroom, and it was such a great game to play afterwards. It's one of the most fun platformers on the PS5, and it's also available on Steam now, so check out those seasonal sales. I cannot recommend this game enough. However, my absolute favourite thing about the game has got to be the DLC. There are so many costumes you can download, and most of them are linked to Sony IPs. We have Kratos, Atreus, Ratchet, Rivet, actually a good Clank costume this time. They even brought back Sack Nana after becoming a huge internet meme, and they're all free. Every single costume is free. One thing I have to criticise is the online. This is the third game in a row I've had to do this. I tried playing with my sister and one of my friends, and both times the connection for the guest was incredibly laggy, with over 2 seconds of input delay. This might have been fixed by now, I can't say for certain, but if you're looking into playing the game for co-op, I'd recommend couch co-op, or if you play on Steam, use an app like Parsec, which allows you to connect as a local player to your friend's computer. It works so much better than Steam Remote Play. But everything else in the game is phenomenal. The controls, the levels, the soundtrack, the difficulty curve, the art style, I cannot praise this game enough. It gets a lot of bad rep in the LBP community, but I just can't see it. It is absolutely worth checking out. And that's all I have to say on Sackboy. There's no create mode, no ongoing community, just a really well designed platformer. The game received an average score of 8 out of 10 and was nominated for 7 awards, winning 3 of them. It sold 1.28 million copies across the PS4 and PS5 versions, and the Steam version holds a staggeringly low 62.9 thousand sales, putting the total number at 1.34 million. It may be the second lowest selling game, but I think those numbers are still respectable, because the game released on a PS5 when nobody had one, and Sackboy was a mascot on live support. But sadly, after Sackboy A Big Adventure, it seemed like the jig was up.
They stole it from me, Carmine! They took it!
This is the part of the retrospective where we all cry. There have been plenty of videos about this from the community, and it speaks volumes to how deeply people connected with LittleBigPlanet. In March 2021, the LittleBigPlanet 3 servers were victim to DDoS attacks. A hacker, or a group of hackers, we're not entirely sure, managed to inject a script to the server that uploaded hundreds of levels every minute. Keep in mind that LittleBigPlanet 3 uses the same server as LittleBigPlanet 2, which is the same server as LittleBigPlanet 1. We're talking a server from 2008 running on the PS4 and 5. The online for LittleBigPlanet 3 was already slow and buggy because of this, but the backwards compatible community levels made it somewhat worth it. But this attack was a new extreme. Other users reported transphobic messages appearing on screen, which I don't feel comfortable showing on screen right now. Trans rights are human rights, and if you need to hack a children's game to spew your hate, you're pathetic. I try not to bring controversial topics to my videos, but there is nothing about transgenderism that should be controversial. If a blonde person dyes their hair brown, do you go shouting, "But biologically, you're blonde"? No, of course you don't. LittleBigPlanet is about self-expression. How can you be a fan of the series, whilst also against people expressing themselves to the point of hacking a server to throw out your disgusting, bigoted opinions? It's like being a fan of X-Men but being far-right. It just doesn't work. Grow up or shut up.
Because of the attacks, the servers were taken offline for all games temporarily on May 22nd, 2021. The Sackboy and LBP Twitter account reassured the fans that everything was being done to restore the servers back to functionality, but on September 13th, 2021, it was announced that the servers for all PS3 LittleBigPlanet games, as well as LittleBigPlanet Vita, would be closed down permanently. However, the LBP3 PS4 server would be restored.
This was very disappointing to many, but to be honest, I think it's incredible that Sumo and XDev were working hard for our community. Stephen Isbell, the community manager for LittleBigPlanet, understood all the frustrations and wasn't mad when people argued. He knew how impactful this series was to many. But at least we still had one avenue for LittleBigPlanet Online through LittleBigPlanet 3 PS4. And coming back to LittleBigPlanet Vita, it meant that any downloaded community levels would still be playable on your system, making that feature more important than ever before. Shutting down the servers for PS3 and Vita meant that security could be improved slightly. There was a silver lining in the darkest time of LittleBigPlanet. We just had to cherish what we had left, because who knows how long we'd have left. Community creators were still passionate, the fans still had their events and competitions. Stephen Isbell still supported the community through this, despite the caveats it still felt magical. But on January 8th, 2024, the final nail was hammered in the coffin. There was a new threat within the game. A user by the name of ChiliBath95 exploited the in-game reporting system, most likely with the assist of a mod, where any account they reported had their LBP profile's description saying moderated. That wasn't the main issue, however. Their PSN account was also banned for up to 60 days. The targeted profiles were creators in the LBP community, and even Stephen Isbell himself. This wasn't just affecting LittleBigPlanet 3 anymore, it was affecting entire PlayStation Network accounts, preventing people from playing online, accessing the store, downloading games, and anything else available with a PSN account. The severity of this attack made it dangerous to anyone who was still an active and vocal member of the community. The servers were once again taken offline almost immediately. The Twitter account continued to post updates. Stephen Isbell was reassuring us that they were doing their best to get the servers back, but on April 19th, 2024, 3 months after the attack, it was announced that LittleBigPlanet 3 PS4 servers were being taken offline permanently. Just writing and talking about this is deeply upsetting to me. An entire childhood's worth of memories with friends and families was now gone. 10 million levels were lost. 16 years worth of levels. If the situation didn't affect actual PSN accounts and was just hacking in-game profiles, changing their descriptions, it probably wouldn't be so serious. But it demonstrated that LittleBigPlanet 3 was now a threat outside of the game. I tried digging, but I couldn't find any news about what happened to ChiliBath95. No articles detailing if their PSN or console was banned, and no articles about legal action. Sony absolutely should have taken legal action against this user. I'm not saying this because I lost a defining part of my youth. I'm saying this because allowing it to slide is only going to encourage hackers to target other games and communities. How long will it be before Wipeout Omega Collection is targeted? What about Dreams, Media Molecule's latest game centered around user-generated content? This person exploited a Sony first-party game with one of their most iconic IPs that falsely took down PSN accounts, and their solution is to take down the game but not the culprit? As upsetting as it all is, I want to thank Sumo Digital and Steven Isbell. They didn't have to work to bring back LittleBigPlanet 3 on PS4. It could have been shut down back in 2021, but for almost 3 years, we got it back. The efforts they put in won't be forgotten by me or the community. Of course, all good things come to an end, but it was taken from us without warning. If the servers got to close in their own time, I imagine Steven Isbell might have held a week-long contest or a huge play session to remember everything the series has brought us over the decades. It could have been a bittersweet ending, a true goodbye to the game. We didn't get that. But thankfully, there is hope. All levels uploaded from LittleBigPlanet 1's launch up to February 20th, 2023 have been archived by a user called Tamiya99. It only includes the levels, so the comments and leaderboard scores aren't backed up, but they aren't really that important. This is 1.2 terabytes worth of levels saved. Around 11 months aren't backed up between February 20th, 2023 to January 8th, 2024. However, people still making levels after February 2023 were most likely active members in the community, so I'm sure they still have their levels saved on their console, which can be then backed up as well. But what use are those levels if you can't play them? Let me introduce you to Little Big Refresh and Beacon.
Future Matt here again with some slightly disappointing news. Little Big Refresh is shutting down. So we still have Beacon, which is good, but the other day it was just announced that LittleBigPlanet Refresh has not been worked on since 2024, and the developers did it as a passion project, and now they've moved on to other things. So it isn't going to be updated anymore, and it's likely going to be shut down in March, so please keep in mind this when watching this section, but Beacon is still an option if you would like to play LittleBigPlanet online.
These are both private LittleBigPlanet servers run by fans. A lot of the levels still need to be uploaded, but the main point is you can play LittleBigPlanet online again. The only issue is you need a modded console, or use the RPCS3 emulator with a PC powerful enough to run it. The servers also don't support the PS4 version of LittleBigPlanet 3 yet. There is work being done to see if it's possible, but there's also something poetic about PS3 and Vita servers being the first to shut down, yet being the first ones to be restored. The performance was greatly boosted in RPCS3 to support low-end PCs, but if you have a PC that can run games well enough with mid to high settings, you shouldn't have much of a problem. Because of the online restoration, this does mean that trophies are now unlockable again, and the Platinum trophies are obtainable. I want to stress though, if you have an online trophy unlocked after the official server closure, it means you have a modded console, which could risk a ban. There were a lot of depressing times, and for a while the community was broken. But from the ashes rose a more dedicated community than ever, and I'm seeing a lot more LittleBigPlanet videos online. I think, overall, it's brought the community together and stronger than ever. The ones who create the private servers, play on them, make content online, they are the purest LittleBigPlanet fans, and the hardships endured in the community since 2021 have grown us stronger. With the official server closure, the lower sales of Sackboy: A Big Adventure, and now Astrobot being a success for the PS5, we have one question on our minds. What is LittleBigPlanet's future, and could it return? I propose 3 different options, some more realistic, and some more ideal. A sequel to Sackboy: A Big Adventure, LittleBigPlanet 4, or remakes. The most unlikely and disappointing would be a sequel to Sackboy: A Big Adventure. It is a great game for sure, one of the best modern 3D platformers in my opinion, but it isn't what we wanted. It was a great spin-off, but replacing LittleBigPlanet with more Sackboy games would be detrimental to the entire concept of the series it originated from. There are plenty of other PlayStation franchises that can satiate the desire for 3D platformers. Astrobot, Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, bring back some older IPs instead of retooling Sackboy. Another reason is the sales figure. Again, I think Sackboy sold well considering it was only a spin-off and a launch title on the PS5, but 1.34 million copies probably isn't much of a success for Sony when you have titles like God of War Ragnarok and Spider-Man 2 breaking sales records, so a Sackboy sequel seems unlikely. So what if we go back to LittleBigPlanet and make a fourth game?
As of November 2024, Astrobot has sold 1.5 million copies, and it's won a staggeringly large amount of game awards. PlayStation's co-CEO has now also said they'd like to invest in some of the older IP of PlayStation, and that's what LittleBigPlanet is. Astrobot's success has paved the way for more smaller budget, family-oriented, all-ages games, and again, that's what LittleBigPlanet is. So I think now more than ever there is a chance of a LittleBigPlanet comeback.
Excluding the mobile games, LittleBigPlanet as a series has over 18 million sales, so bringing the series back would be a great way to test the waters with platformers further. Either way, LittleBigPlanet sells well, and the brand of LittleBigPlanet has more selling power than just Sackboy alone. And even when stripping the core concept of play, create, share, Sackboy A Big Adventure still sold 1.34 million. There is clear appeal with the franchise and character, and a LittleBigPlanet 4 would most likely be a huge success. Add on the sales for all the DLC across the games, and there's no doubt the games brought in masses of cash. The creativity on display in LittleBigPlanet 3 and Sackboy shows that Sumo Digital are a more than capable studio to take the helm, but they just need time for quality assurance, something they didn't have the luxury of with LittleBigPlanet 3. But the advancements made between LBP 1-2 and LBP 2-3 set up a difficult task. What could LittleBigPlanet 4 offer that's new? How could the series evolve past a third game? Of course the main draw would be the return of online functionality in an official game, but for that there's another path available. The one I think would be the most successful and preferable: remakes. But we're going one step further. There was a cancelled game called LittleBigPlanet Hub. This was a free-to-play LBP game containing the stories of LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2, and sadly it never released. It's speculated that the game changed during development to become LittleBigPlanet 3, and in February 2024, shortly after the PS4 servers were taken offline, the demo for LBP Hub was finally discovered. We got our first ever look at LBP Hub, and it looked great. The trailer discussed challenges, something we see in the gameplay. We knew for a long time there was meant to be a seaside level, and we see that in the introduction. But what links this to LBP3 to suggest it originated from LBP Hub? LBP3 released in November 2014, but the trailer for LBP Hub was released in August 2013. Maybe they were developed alongside each other and Hub was canned.
So yes, this is actually the case. Steven Isbell has confirmed on Twitter that LittleBigPlanet Hub and LittleBigPlanet 3 were separate games. LittleBigPlanet Hub did not become LittleBigPlanet 3. But I do want to explain still, and I do want to keep this part in the video about why the community thought that LittleBigPlanet Hub became LittleBigPlanet 3, because I still feel it is important to the retrospective and understanding the community's thoughts up until we found out this information a couple of months ago. I still want to explain why this was originally in the script and why this was a sentiment that a lot of the community believed.
Take another look at the Hub trailer. This costume right here is original to LittleBigPlanet Hub. It was never seen before this trailer. Same with this one. These were later released as DLC for LittleBigPlanet 3. And the Seaside level? It got repurposed as DLC 2 in the Seaside Surprise level kit. The challenges in the 2016 update? LittleBigPlanet Hub. All of this evidence combined suggests LittleBigPlanet Hub was scrapped and became the framework for LittleBigPlanet 3 instead. So, why do I think we should go back to LittleBigPlanet Hub? My main reason is this: a free-to-play option restoring online functionality through an all-in-one package. This sounds far too ideal with no financial cost for the consumer, so let's figure out some monetization for it. Downloading the game gives you access to an original story. Since LBP Hub would be free, perhaps it could be a short one, with 3 worlds containing 3 main levels and 1 side level. These could reuse worlds and assets from Sackboy: A Big Adventure to lower the cost in making a free-to-play game. Of course, you'd have the moon to create levels in, and online to publish your levels. The key aspect would be the return to form of play, create, and share. And in the spirit of original LBP Hub, bring back the stories of every game, excluding LBPKarting for obvious reasons. Each game could be offered at around $7.99 apiece. For LBP 1, 2, 3, PSP and Vita, you would pay $39.92 in total, though maybe you could save money through bundles, console bundle for £20 and a handheld bundle for $15, bringing the cost to a clean £35. Having all the games available would mean every object, costume, music track, sticker, decoration, every single prize in the series would be available in one game. All the DLC costumes, mini-packs and level packs will return, allowing for another stream of income to support the free-to-play model. Making people rebuy existing DLC wouldn't be very consumer-friendly, but also I wouldn't be surprised if Sony did do that. So instead, there could be constant updates with new DLC too. More collaborations based on Sony IPs would be easy to negotiate, and prevent the issue of delisting licensed DLC, which happened with all of the Disney branded stuff in December 2017. Much like how LittleBigPlanet 3 offered a DLC for Sackboy's prehistoric move items, there could be a DLC pack for LittleBigPlanet Karting's exclusive costumes and stickers too, allowing those items to still be present and still retain its history. In the main games, there's a 20 level limit on your published levels. Offer a creator pack that expands the profile size to 30, containing exclusive tools within them. Ideally, there would be a physical copy available for the same price of £35 with the bundles, but that seems too unrealistic. If Sony published a free-to-play game, they wouldn't lower their income from that by allowing purchases outside of the PlayStation Store. To summarise, there are plenty of ways to monetize the game fairly if it were free to play. Each game's cost, the trove of DLC, and some creator packs that expand the options for your moon and the Earth. But why keep LBP Hub as a free download and not just a game to buy? Free-to-play games bring in millions of new players all the time. If each player enjoyed the game, they may end up buying the story packs and other DLC. Returning LBP fans will be happy to rebuy the games if they're remade, and be the first people to upload community content, as well as buy tons of the new DLC, as well as old DLC they didn't have before. The obvious problem to this revamped LBP Hub is LBPVita. Motion controls can replace the Vita's gyro controls no problem, but it is so reliant on the touchscreen and rear touchpad that surely it wouldn't work with any other system. In 2018, a team of creators by the name of Trixel Creative uploaded a community adventure called Return to Carnivalia. This was a semi-sequel to LBPVita, but how did they circumvent the problem of the touchscreen and rear touchpad? The right analog stick. It's only used for moving your arms, and only when holding L2 or R2 for the left and right arm respectively. For the rear touchpad, you would hold triangle and use the motion controls instead. These solutions worked in the context of Return to Carnivalia, but would they work in a remake of LBPVita? Yes, but it just wouldn't be super smooth. Bear in mind these solutions were made within the constraints of LittleBigPlanet 3's tools. LittleBigPlanet Hub could change this. The DualSense controller has the perfect solution. It's so simple it's almost ridiculous. The touchpad. It is the natural, perfect swap for the touchscreen. But emulating the rear touchpad is a bit more complicated. You still need to use the left stick to move whilst also being able to jump, all while still using the rear touchpad. The DualSense's touchpad paired with another button, whilst also using the left stick and trying to jump, wouldn't work. But Trixel Creative may have been on the right track here. Triangle with the motion controls was very clever for their project, and triangle is an unused button in your standard gameplay. Instead of thinking about how to emulate the touchscreen and touchpad separately, what if we used triangle as a toggle between the two? You use the DualSense's touchpad for both, and press triangle to switch between the touchscreen and rear touchpad. It would mean you use the touchpad for both iterations of touch controls without having to sacrifice using your hands for anything other than moving Sackboy. With that problem solved, all LittleBigPlanet games would be playable and functional. It would be the perfect way to bring back LittleBigPlanet, bringing many new fans to the series who maybe chose an Xbox 360 over a PS3 and never played the original games, whilst also offering every game and item in the series. Free to play means expanding the user base far higher than it ever was, including each game at a low price as well as DLC costumes and level packs of licensed characters, as well as Sony IPs, would entice new and old fans to spend money and support the game. It would be a breath of fresh air to the free-to-play model. It is overrun with first-person and third-person shooters, so having a platform would likely intrigue a lot of people. The idea is perfect, it's easily monetizable, and now I'm getting sad it isn't already a thing. And if you think, but it can't be completely maintained forever, remember that they planned to do this originally. If it wasn't feasible, it wouldn't have been an idea, and so far along development, way back in 2013. But I do understand that developing games is very different to what it was 10 years ago. So what was a feasible idea back then may not be now, and that's why I think consistent DLC as well as charging money for the remade versions of the story packs makes the most sense. So that was a full retrospective of LittleBigPlanet, its highs and lows, and how to continue the series today. If I missed anything important, please feel free to comment it below. This is the longest video I've ever made, and it has taken an incredibly long time to write the script, record it, get gameplay footage, and edit the video. I try to be as thorough as I can, but some information may have slipped by. If you enjoyed, make sure to like the video and subscribe, it really helps out a ton and lets me know if you enjoyed the content. And feel free to comment your own opinions about my hypothetical revamped LBP hub, whether you think it's a good idea or not, or your memories playing the game when you were younger. Don't let the discussion of LittleBigPlanet end. Let Sony know we want this series back. The best way to make your voice heard is to use your voice. Make your own videos and posts, stream the games, share the content you watch. Support Trixel Creative through their development of their LittleBigPlanet inspired game Restitched and buy it when it releases. Also, Trixel Creative, you are doing amazing work, the game looks amazing and I can't wait to play it. Keep the discussion of LittleBigPlanet alive. There is no better way to let Sony know that this series can continue. I hold this series very dear to my heart, and seeing such a passionate community years on brings such a smile. I know this video is incredibly long, so if you stuck around to the end, thank you for watching and thank you for your patience. With all that being said, thank you for watching and have a nice day. Except you, ChiliBath95.